The thing about First Contact is that nobody ever expects it to come with a PowerPoint presentation. Ambassador Claxon of the Galactic Confederation stood before the United Nations General Assembly, his three eyes blinking in what he probably thought was a reassuring pattern. His translator device buzzed with the kind of corporate enthusiasm usually reserved for timeshare presentations. "Greetings, primitive inhabitants of Sol 3, he began. And honestly, starting with primitive probably should have been our first red flag. I am here to offer your species the most generous gift in galactic history: protection." The holographic display behind him flickered to life, showing what looked like a cosmic insurance commercial. Planets exploding in spectacular fashion, alien armadas sweeping through star systems. The works, really high production value, you had to give them credit. "The galaxy is a dangerous place," Claxon continued, his voice dripping with practiced sympathy. "Rogue asteroid swarms, pirate fleets, cosmic radiation storms. And don't get me started on the Void Reapers." The hologram helpfully showed some genuinely terrifying tentacle monsters devouring a space station. "But fear not. The Galactic Confederation has been protecting innocent civilizations for over 10,000 years. Secretary General Rivera leaned forward in her chair. "That's very considerate of you. What exactly does this protection entail?" Claxon's middle eye brightened. This was clearly his favorite part. "For the modest fee of 60% of your planetary GDP, we'll establish a protection grid around your solar system. Complete coverage against all external threats. We'll even throw in a complimentary asteroid deflection system." 60%, Rivera repeated slowly. "Plus a small administrative fee," Claxon added quickly. "And there's a nominal charge for our peacekeeping fleet's maintenance. Oh, and parking fees for our orbital stations. But that's all outlined in Section 4012 of the Standard Contract." The hologram switched to testimonials. A parade of grateful alien leaders gushed about the Confederation's protection services. They all had the same slightly desperate look in their eyes, like hostages reading from cue cards. "But wait," announced a cheerful voice from the human delegation. Marcus Volt, Earth's chief negotiator, raised his hand with the enthusiasm of someone who just spotted a great deal at a used car lot. "This sounds fantastic. Tell me more about these threats you're protecting us from." Claxon blinked all three eyes in sequence. In his experience, most species either cowered in fear, or immediately started negotiating payment plans. They didn't ask for more details about the threats. That wasn't how this worked. "Well," he stammered, "as I mentioned, there are many dangers in space. Pirates, asteroids, hostile aliens." "Right, but specifically," Marcus pressed, pulling out a tablet and stylus like he was about to take notes. "Who are these pirates? What are their capabilities? How often do they attack? Do you have recent incident reports? What about insurance claims? Surely you track the effectiveness of your protection services." The ambassador's translator started making distressed beeping sounds. This was definitely not going according to the script. Marcus leaned back in his chair with a satisfied expression of someone who just found the fine print. "I mean, if we're going to invest 60% of our GDP in protection services, we should probably do some due diligence, right? Standard business practice." Claxon's skin began shifting through various shades of purple, which his translator helpfully informed everyone was the alien equivalent of nervous sweating. "Due diligence. Oh, absolutely," Marcus said, clicking his stylus with enthusiasm. "For instance, these Void Reapers you mentioned. Terrifying-looking things, very impressive tentacles. When was their last documented attack? What's their typical modus operandi? Have they ever actually attacked a Confederation-protected world? Well, they're very dangerous." Claxon stammered. "I'm sure they are. But have they attacked anyone recently? This century? This millennium?" Marcus's smile was getting wider. "Because I noticed in your promotional material, all the destruction footage looks remarkably similar. Same camera angles, same explosion patterns. Almost like it was from the same source." The ambassador's middle eye began twitching. This was supposed to be simple. You show up, display some scary holograms, collect tribute, move on to the next system. Nobody was supposed to analyze the marketing materials. "The important thing," Claxon said quickly, "is that we're here to help. The Confederation has maintained galactic peace for millennia." "Right, peace," Marcus nodded thoughtfully. "Speaking of which, I'm curious about your military structure. How many ships in your protection fleet? What's your response time for emergency situations? Do you have mutual defense agreements with other galactic powers?" Secretary General Rivera was now openly enjoying herself. "Yes, and what about your track record? Surely you have statistics on successful threat interventions, customer satisfaction ratings, maybe some independent reviews." Klaxon's translator was now making sounds like a dial-up modem having an existential crisis. We don't typically, that is, most species are simply grateful for our protection. Most species, Marcus repeated, making notes. Interesting phrasing. What about the ones that aren't grateful? Do you have a customer complaint process? What's your policy on service termination? Service termination, you know, if a client wants to cancel their protection plan, switch providers, handle their own security, that sort of thing. The silence that followed was the kind you usually hear right before someone says something they probably shouldn't. There are no other providers, Klaxon said slowly, and discontinuing protection would be inadvisable. The galaxy is very dangerous for unprotected worlds. Marcus and Rivera exchanged a look. There it was. The threat hiding behind the sales pitch. Inadvisable. How? Marcus asked with the tone of someone who'd just spotted the ace up the dealer's sleeve. Klaxon realized he'd said too much. His skin was now cycling through colors that probably didn't have names in any human language. Perhaps we should focus on the contract terms. Very reasonable rates, really, considering the comprehensive coverage. Oh, we're definitely interested in the contract, Marcus said, his grin now approaching shark-like proportions. In fact, I think Earth might be able to offer you something even better. The holographic projector dimmed as Marcus stood up, producing his own tablet with the kind of theatrical flair usually reserved for courtroom dramas. Ambassador Klaxon, what if I told you that instead of Earth paying for protection, we could provide protection services to the Galactic Confederation? Klaxon's three eyes did something that probably violated several laws of biology. I'm sorry, what? Protection services, Marcus repeated cheerfully. See, we've been listening to your presentation and frankly, we're concerned about the security gaps in your current system. 60% of GDP is a lot to pay for what sounds like a pretty basic package. Rivera was trying very hard not to laugh. Mr. Volt, perhaps you should elaborate. Gladly. Marcus activated his own holographic display, which immediately put the Confederations to shame. High-definition footage of Earth's military in action began playing. Ladies, gentlemen, and distinguished three-eyed ambassadors, I present to you the most battle-tested military force in the known galaxy. Humans. The first clip showed a perfectly choreographed military parade. Tanks, jets, soldiers marching in formation. Very impressive, very professional. Klaxon nodded approvingly. We've been perfecting the art of warfare for over 10,000 years, Marcus continued. And unlike most species, we've had the unique advantage of practicing on ourselves. The footage switched to historical battles. Klaxon's expression shifted from mild interest to growing concern as the clips progressed from ancient sword fights to modern military operations. You see, Ambassador, most civilizations develop spaceflight and then meet other species. We developed approximately 47 different ways to blow things up before we figured out how to leave our own planet. 47. Klaxon squeaked. That's just the categories. We have subcategories. Lots of subcategories. Marcus was clearly enjoying himself. The thing is, we've spent our entire history assuming that someone was going to try to invade us. We've been preparing for intergalactic war since before we knew there was a galaxy. The hologram now showed Earth's space program. Satellites, space stations, the International Space Station, all very peaceful and scientific. This is just what we let people see, Marcus said casually. What we don't advertise is that every single one of these research stations can be converted to a weapons platform in about 6 hours. We've been paranoid about alien invasion since the 1950s. Klaxon was now a color that his translator couldn't even process. But you're a primitive species. You've barely achieved interstellar travel. Primitive. Marcus looked genuinely offended. Ambassador, we've been monitoring your communications since you entered our solar system. Your encryption is adorable, by the way. Very retro. We broke it in about 20 minutes. That's impossible. Is it? Tell me. How many wars has the Confederation fought in the last century? Well, we maintain peace through diplomatic channels. Right. How many wars has Earth fought in the last century? Klaxon's translator made a sound like a calculator having a nervous breakdown. The answer is 73 major conflicts, not counting civil wars, border disputes, and that thing with the dolphins in 2019 that we don't talk about. Marcus was now pacing like a sales presenter hitting his stride. We're not just warriors, Ambassador. We're professional warriors. We've turned fighting into an art form, a science, and a recreational activity. The hologram switched to a compilation of human military innovation, stealth technology, precision weapons, tactical strategies. Each clip was more impressive than the last. But here's the really interesting part, Marcus continued. We've been doing all of this without knowing that there were other species out there. Everything you see here, we developed it assuming we'd be fighting other humans. Imagine what we could accomplish if we actually had a proper enemy. Klaxon was now making a continuous whimpering sound that his translator was rendering as "oh dear, oh dear, oh dear." "So here's our offer," Marcus said, producing an official-looking document. "Instead of paying you 60% of our GDP for protection we probably don't need, how about we provide security services for the Confederation? Very reasonable rates. Only 30% of your GDP." 30%. Klaxon gasped. "Plus administrative fees," Marcus added with a grin. "We're not unreasonable." 3 days later, Ambassador Klaxon found himself strapped into what humans cheerfully called an observation shuttle, watching Earth's military prepare for what they'd termed a friendly demonstration. The fact that they'd used air quotes around friendly was not helping his anxiety levels. "Now, Ambassador," Marcus said over the intercom, sounding like a tour guide at a theme park, "we thought we'd start with something simple. Basic defensive capabilities." The shuttle's view screen showed a section of Earth's orbital space where several dozen objects were floating. Klaxon's military attaché, a nervous creature named Pip, was frantically taking notes on a tablet that kept shorting out from his stress sweating. "Those are decommissioned satellites," Marcus explained. "We figured we'd use them as target practice. Realistic simulation of an incoming hostile fleet." "How many ships are you using for this demonstration?" Klaxon asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Ships?" Marcus sounded confused. "Oh, we're not using ships for this part. Jenkins, you ready down there?" A crackling voice came through the comm. "Target acquisition locked. Ready to demonstrate the orbital defense grid, sir." "What orbital defense grid?" Klaxon's voice shot up several octaves. "The one we built last Tuesday," Marcus said casually. "After your visit, we figured we should probably upgrade our defenses a bit." Amazing what you can accomplish when you put 17 different military-industrial complexes in competition with each other. Klaxon looked out the view screen. He couldn't see any defense grid. "Where exactly is this grid?" "Oh, it's there. We just made it invisible. Stealth technology, you know. We've gotten pretty good at hiding things." Marcus paused. "Jenkins, light him up." What happened next would haunt Klaxon's dreams for years to come. The empty space around the satellite suddenly erupted in coordinated light beams. Not from ships, not from visible platforms, but from apparently nowhere. The satellites didn't just explode, they disintegrated. Precision targeting that carved each object apart at the molecular level. "Phase 1 complete," Jenkins reported. "Switching to rapid deployment mode." "Now this is the fun part," Marcus said with obvious glee. "We figured, what if we need to respond to a threat quickly? So we developed some mobile response units." Klaxon watched in growing horror as sections of what he'd assumed were asteroids suddenly unfolded into massive weapons platforms. They'd been there all along, perfectly camouflaged, waiting. "How long have those been in position?" Pip whispered. "About 6 hours," Marcus replied. "We moved them into place while you were having breakfast. Stealthy bunch, our military engineers." But the demonstration was just getting started. "Of course sometimes you need boots on the ground," Marcus continued. "Peterson's team is handling the boarding demonstration." "Boarding?" Klaxon's voice was now approaching ultrasonic frequencies. A new section of space lit up with what appeared to be a small asteroid field. Except as Klaxon watched through the view screen, he realized the asteroids were moving, in formation, and they were accelerating toward a target ship that had definitely not been there a moment ago. "Where did that ship come from?" Klaxon demanded. "Oh, that's one of ours," Marcus said cheerfully. "We built it yesterday. Reverse engineered from the scans we took of your vessel when you arrived. Hope you don't mind, but we made some improvements." The asteroid ships reached the target, and Klaxon watched in fascination and terror as they didn't so much dock as consume the larger vessel. Within minutes the target ship was completely overrun. "Boarding complete." Peterson's voice crackled through the comm. "Hostile vessel secured. Also, sir, we figured out how to make their weapons better. Permission to retrofit our entire fleet." "Permission granted," Marcus replied. "Now, Ambassador, for our final demonstration, we thought we'd show you our rapid deployment capabilities." Klaxon was beginning to understand why so many species had signed protection contracts without asking questions. This was the stuff of nightmares. "We call this one the Instant Fleet Protocol," Marcus said with pride. "Developed it after we realized that most galactic conflicts probably don't give you much advance warning." The view screen zoomed out to show Earth in the distance. It looked peaceful, blue and white, and utterly harmless. "Now watch carefully," Marcus instructed. Klaxon watched. For a moment nothing happened. Then space around Earth began to shimmer. Ships materialized. Not a few ships, not dozens of ships, hundreds of ships, thousands of ships. They appeared in perfect formation, weapons armed, ready for combat. The fleet stretched from Earth's orbit all the way to the moon. Deployment time 4 minutes 37 seconds, someone reported over the comm. New personal record. Where were they? Claxon's voice was barely a whisper. Cloaked, Marcus said simply. We've had them on standby since your first visit. Just in case your protection offer wasn't as friendly as it sounded. Pip dropped his tablet. It exploded into sparks when it hit the shuttle floor. Now, Marcus said, turning to face Claxon with that same cheerful smile he'd worn during the UN presentation. Shall we discuss the terms of our protection services? I think you'll find our rates very competitive. The ambassador looked out at the massive human fleet. Then at Marcus's expectant expression, then at his broken translator, which was now just making sounds like a dying mechanical bird. I think, Claxon said slowly, we may need to revise our initial assessment of Earth's protection needs. Excellent, Marcus beamed. I was hoping you'd see it our way. Back on Earth, in what was now being called the Galactic Relations Conference Room, though the aliens suspected it was just a repurposed interrogation chamber, Ambassador Claxon sat across from Marcus with the defeated posture of someone who'd just discovered their protection racket had met its match. Marcus opened a thick folder labeled Operation Reverse Psychology and spread out several holographic displays. Now, Ambassador, before we finalize our protection services agreement, I thought you might like to know what we've discovered about your little organization. Claxon's middle eye twitched. Discovered? Oh yes, we've been busy. Marcus activated the first display, showing a detailed map of the galaxy with trade routes, fleet positions, and what appeared to be a comprehensive breakdown of the Confederation's entire operation. Fascinating business model you've got there. Very efficient. Threaten a planet, offer protection from the threats you control, collect tribute, repeat. That's not. Claxon started, then stopped. There really wasn't any point in denying it anymore. The Void Reapers, for instance. Marcus pulled up detailed schematics. Impressive-looking ships, terrible at actual combat, remote-controlled, minimal crew, designed purely for intimidation, very cost-effective. We particularly enjoyed the tentacle design, very theatrical. Pip, who had been quietly trying to repair his tablet, looked up in horror. How did you access our classified files? Classified. Marcus looked genuinely amused. Pip, my friend, your entire communications network uses the galactic equivalent of a password that's just password 123. We didn't hack your system, we politely knocked on the front door. The next holographic display showed the Confederation's protection fleet in all its underwhelming glory, ships that looked impressive from a distance, but were clearly built for show rather than actual combat. 12 ships, Marcus noted, making marks on his tablet. Total crew of about 300. Armed with weapons that are about 2 centuries behind current human technology. And you've been using this to intimidate how many worlds? 4,732, Claxon admitted miserably. Impressive reach, Marcus nodded approvingly. Really, it's quite an achievement. Building a galactic empire on pure bluff takes real commitment. The door to the conference room opened, and Secretary General Rivera entered, followed by a woman in military uniform carrying another thick folder. Ambassador, Rivera said pleasantly. I'd like you to meet General Patricia Walsh, Earth's new Director of Galactic Security Operations. General Walsh sat down and opened her folder with the efficiency of someone who'd done this briefing many times before. Mr. Ambassador, in the past 72 hours, we've been in communication with representatives from 437 worlds currently under Confederation protections. Claxon's skin shifted to a color that his translator database simply labeled as existential dread. Fascinating conversations, Walsh continued. Turns out, most of them have been looking for an alternative to your services for quite some time. They just didn't know how to safely terminate their contracts. Marcus leaned forward with interest. And what did you tell them? That Earth's Protection Services Division was now accepting new clients, Walsh replied with a perfectly straight face. Very reasonable rates, full military support, and most importantly, completely voluntary contracts with transparent termination clauses. You contacted our clients. Claxon's voice cracked. Your former clients, Rivera corrected gently. As of this morning, 212 worlds have formally requested to transfer their protection services to Earth. The number is climbing hourly. Walsh pulled out another tablet and began scrolling through messages. The Zephyrian Republic was particularly enthusiastic. They've offered to provide detailed intelligence on Confederation operations in exchange for priority protection status. The Crystalline Collective wants to discuss a mutual defense pact. and the Aquatic Federation has invited our entire fleet to use their worlds as forward operating bases. This is impossible, Klaxon protested. The Confederation has maintained galactic order for millennia, order built on fear and extortion, Marcus pointed out. Not exactly a stable foundation. The moment someone offered a better alternative, your whole system started collapsing. General Walsh stood up and activated a new holographic display showing real-time galactic communications. Message after message was flooding in from worlds across the galaxy, all requesting information about Earth's protection services. The interesting part, Walsh continued, is that once word got out about our capabilities, several previously unknown civilizations came forward. Apparently, they've been hiding from the Confederation for centuries, afraid of being forced into your protection scheme. The Shadow Syndicate emerged from wherever they've been hiding, and immediately offered to share their stealth technology, Rivera added. The Nomad fleets have pledged their mobile construction platforms. Even the legendary Ghost Admiral sent a message. The Ghost Admiral is a myth, Klaxon whispered. Was a myth, Marcus corrected. Turns out she's been running a resistance network for the past 200 years, just waiting for someone with enough firepower to challenge the Confederation. She's very excited to meet us. Walsh pulled up a star chart, showing the rapidly changing political landscape of the galaxy. Green sections marked worlds now under Earth protection, red showed remaining Confederation territory, and various other colors indicated new alliances and emerging powers. Within 6 months, Walsh projected, we estimate that the Confederation will control less than 15% of its former territory. Most of your fleet commanders have already sent us discreet inquiries about defecting. Admiral Vex wants to discuss terms, Rivera added. Commander Zara has offered to provide detailed tactical information about Confederation military capabilities, and Captain Morks apparently just wants to know if our cafeteria food is better than what they serve on Confederation ships. Klaxon buried his face in his hands, or at least the alien equivalent. This is a disaster. This is evolution, Marcus said cheerfully. You had a good run, Ambassador, but your business model was always going to fail eventually. You just happened to try it on the one species that spent 10,000 years preparing for exactly this scenario. General Walsh sat back down and pulled out one final document, which brings us to our final offer, Ambassador. The Galactic Confederation can either dissolve peacefully and allow its member worlds to choose their own security arrangements, or, Klaxon asked weakly, Marcus's smile took on a distinctly predatory quality, or we demonstrate why humans have never lost a war we were actually trying to win. 6 months later, Ambassador Klaxon sat in his new office on Luna Station, staring at a motivational poster that read "Teamwork makes the dream work," with a picture of Earth's fleet in formation. The irony was not lost on him that he now worked in human resources for the very organization that had dismantled his entire civilization's power structure. His official title was Director of Interspecies Cultural Integration, which was corporate speak for the guy who explains to former Confederation worlds why their new human overlords are actually much better than their old alien overlords. The humans had been very generous with the job description, even if they'd been less generous with his salary negotiations. The door chimed, and Marcus walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and a tablet displaying what appeared to be a queue of incoming communications. Morning, Klaxon, Marcus said cheerfully, setting down one of the cups. How's the transition going? Klaxon gestured weakly at his desk, which was covered in forms, complaint reports, and what the humans called customer satisfaction surveys. The Regellian system is filing a formal complaint about your fleet's response time. Apparently when they called for assistance with a pirate raid, your ships arrived before they finished sending the distress signal. Ah, the Regellians, Marcus nodded knowingly. They're still adjusting to the concept of efficient service. What was their complaint exactly? They said, and I quote, the human ships appeared out of nowhere, eliminated the pirates, performed a full system security audit, upgraded our planetary defense grid, and left us a fruit basket, all before we could finish explaining the situation. It was deeply unsettling. Marcus made a note on his tablet. I'll talk to Admiral Chen about maybe waiting a full 30 seconds before engaging. We don't want to make our clients nervous. Klaxon took a sip of his coffee, which he had to admit was significantly better than anything served on Confederation ships. The Crystalline Collective is requesting a meeting about expanding their protection package. They want to add what they're calling preemptive threat eliminations to their contract. Preemptive threat elimination, Marcus repeated thoughtfully. They want us to stop problems before they start. Essentially, yes. They've identified 17 potential future conflicts in their sector and want Earth to resolve them before they become actual problems. Marcus was quiet for a moment, then started typing on his tablet with the enthusiasm of someone who'd just discovered a new hobby. You know what? I like the way they think. Schedule a meeting with the collective's representatives. This could be the future of galactic security. Marcus, Claxon said carefully. Do you realize that what you're describing is essentially becoming the galactic police force? Not police, Marcus corrected. Security consultants, very different business model. Police respond to crimes after they happen. We prevent the crimes from happening in the first place. The communication system chimed, and General Walsh's voice filled the office. Marcus, we've got a situation developing in the Outer Rim. 3 different species are claiming the same uninhabited system, and tensions are escalating. How many ships do they have total? Marcus asked. About 12, scattered across the 3 fleets. And how many ships do we have in that sector? Currently, 47. The Nomad Fleet construction platforms just finished building a new squadron last week. Marcus turned to Claxon with a grin. Want to see how modern diplomacy works? 20 minutes later, Claxon found himself back on an observation shuttle, watching the human approach to interstellar conflict resolution. The 3 fleets in question were positioned around the disputed system, each faction apparently convinced that their claim was the strongest. This is Admiral Rodriguez to all ships in the disputed system, came the calm voice over the communications array. Please stand by for mediation services. What happened next was peak human efficiency. Instead of engaging in lengthy negotiations or threatening displays of force, the human fleet simply solved the problem. Geological survey complete, reported one of the human ships. The system contains 3 habitable worlds, 7 resource-rich asteroids, and 2 gas giants suitable for fuel harvesting. More than enough for all 3 parties. Proposed solution uploaded to all parties, announced another ship. Species A gets the agricultural world and mining rights to asteroids 1 through 3. Species B gets the industrial world and asteroids 4 through 6. Species gets the research world and asteroids 7, plus exclusive fuel harvesting rights. But that's not how territorial disputes work, one of the alien commanders protested over the comm. We're supposed to fight over it until someone wins. Why? Admiral Rodriguez asked, sounding genuinely curious. You all need different things. The system has everything you need. Fighting over it would just waste resources and time. Because that's how it's always been done. Well, that seems inefficient, the Admiral replied. Also, our preliminary scans show that system has ideal conditions for a joint research station. If you're interested, Earth would be happy to provide the construction framework for a collaborative facility. Claxon watched in amazement, as what should have been a 3-way war turned into an impromptu planning session for a cooperative colonization effort. Within 2 hours, the 3 species were discussing shared infrastructure projects and cultural exchange programs. How do you do that? Claxon asked Marcus, who was watching the proceedings with obvious satisfaction. Do what? Turn enemies into allies in the span of an afternoon. Marcus considered the question seriously. I think it's because we approach problems differently. Most species see conflict as competition, where someone has to lose for someone else to win. Humans see conflict as a puzzle to be solved. Usually, there's a solution that works for everyone, if you're creative enough to find it. But what if there isn't a solution that works for everyone? Marcus's expression grew more serious. Then we make sure we're not the ones who lose. The shuttle's communication system crackled to life again. Mr. Volt, we're receiving priority communications from 17 different sectors, all requesting immediate consultation on various disputes. 17, Marcus pulled up the message queue on his tablet. Let's see. Territorial dispute in Sector 7, trade route disagreement in the Spiral Arm, succession crisis in the Core Worlds, and, he scrolled down further. Oh, this is interesting. The Hive Mind Collective wants to discuss joining our protection network. The Hive Mind, Claxon's voice shot up. They've been isolationist for 3,000 years. Apparently not anymore. Marcus replied, reading the message. They're offering to share their distributed intelligence technology in exchange for security guarantees. They're also asking if we'd be interested in a joint project to map the entire galaxy. Claxon looked out at the peaceful resolution happening in the disputed system, then at Marcus's tablet showing the flood of requests for human intervention across the galaxy, then at the small human fleet that had somehow become the de facto arbitrators of galactic civilization. You realize, Claxon said slowly, that you've accidentally become the most powerful political force in the galaxy. Accidentally? Marcus raised an eyebrow. Claxon, my friend, humans don't do anything accidentally. We saw a poorly run organization, identified the inefficiencies, and implemented a better system. That's not an accident, that's just good business. He stood up and gestured toward the view screen, showing the former conflict zone, now buzzing with cooperative activity. The Confederation's mistake was thinking that power comes from fear. Real power comes from being useful, and right now, humans are very useful to have around. Claxon's translator made a sound that roughly translated to resigned acceptance. So what happens now? Marcus smiled and pulled up a new document on his tablet labeled Phase 2 Galactic Infrastructure Development. Now we get to work. The galaxy's a big place, Klaxon, and there's a lot of room for improvement. Lucky for everyone else, humans love a good project. Outside the shuttle, the stars twinkled peacefully in space that was now, for the first time in millennia, truly safe for everyone traveling through it. Even if none of them had realized they were going to end up with human managers. But as Marcus liked to say, the best kind of leadership is the kind nobody sees coming until it's already working.